Before we begin embossing, we just need a few more supplies. We need a mounting board, straight pins, plastic sheeting, your paper pattern layout, some sheer fabric, your stencil, the spreader, colored paste, and your cleaning station. The mounting board is a 1/2-inch thick rigid foam insulation from the hardware store. I like to use straight pins that are a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch long. Thin plastic sheeting, again from the hardware store. Now we'll set up the mounting board by first making a paper sandwich. We're going to put a piece of our plastic sheeting, our paper pattern, and another piece of plastic. Pin it on the sides of the board. And then lay your sheer fabric over the top. I start pinning the fabric at opposite corners on the board. I work my way around the board. The pins are between 2 and 3 inches apart, and I try not to stretch the fabric. It should be taut, but you don't want to stretch it off grain. You're probably wondering why we're using the paper sandwich. Instead of using registration marks, you can line up your stencil with the paper pattern when embossing sheer fabrics. Now that we've got our fabric mounted, let's take out a couple extra pins. We're going to use those to pin the stencil in place. Get your stencil and your spreader ready and open up your bag of colored paste. Try to get it to stand up with a wide opening. It makes it easier to dip your spreader in to load it with paste. Line up your stencil with the paper pattern. We're going to pin the stencil in place diagonally. Don't push the pins in too far. It makes it too hard to get them out later. When you're loading your paste on your spreader, use the fleur-de-lis as a guide. Try not to get paste up onto the fleur-de-lis. When you spread the paste over the stencil, go with the pattern. Don't go across the pattern because the paste can seep under the edges of the stencil. Now I'm going to be quiet so you can hear what spreading paste sounds like. Hear that gritty sound? That's caused by the pressure of the spreader pulling the paste across the stencil. Before you remove the stencil, you want to check your embossing to make sure it is smooth, there are no ridges, and all the spaces are evenly covered. Then hold the stencil steady while you remove the pins. To remove the stencil, we're going to anchor one corner and lift the opposite corner as we roll the stencil away from the embossing. Let's do another one. You don't have to clean the stencil before embossing another pattern. Just align the stencil over the next repeat and pin it in place. You already have paste on your stencil, but it's just not in the right place. So let's scrape that off and spread it into the openings. Now load more paste onto your spreader to finish out the pattern. Check your embossing before you remove the stencil. Hold the stencil steady while you remove the pins. Next, remember we're going to anchor, lift, and roll the stencil away. Try to do this in a smooth motion. Now take your paste, spreader, and stencil to the cleaning station. First, scrape the paste from the stencil and the spreader and put it back into the bag. Think of your bag of paste as the bank, and the paste itself as your money. You want to deposit any leftover money back in the bank. Notice how I'm holding the bag. My finger becomes a ridge, pulling the spreader across it to remove the paste. Now that you have the paste removed from the stencil, put it over in the tub. We're going to put the spreader in the container of alcohol to let it soak. While we work the paste down to the bottom of the bag, tuck the sides and roll it on itself, forcing all the air out. If you handle the paste the same way each time, it becomes second nature. To pull it to the bottom of the bag, tuck in the sides, roll it on itself, and seal it. Gently scrub your stencil. Concentrate on the open areas of the stencil. The paste will build up in those areas. If you let the paste build up on the open edges of your stencil, it's going to affect the quality of the edges of your next embossed patterns. When your stencil is clean, dry it off and set it to the side. Next, remove your spreader from the alcohol. I like to wipe off the extra paste. It helps keep the tub a little bit cleaner. Then you want to scrub your spreader, making sure the edge you spread with is clean. Finally, we have everything clean and we're ready to start embossing again. I'm pretty sure this isn't the quickest quick start video you've ever watched, but I do hope I've explained each step in the process so that you can enjoy embossing as much as I do.